They always get it wrong. Every movie, every show, every book with a vampire in it, they all make the same mistake. They turn monsters into fantasies. They dress them up in tuxedos and give them castles, soft piano music, and tragic backstories. They make them seductive, noble, charming, a misunderstood predator with a soul, something dark and alluring but ultimately human enough to pity, even love. It's all bullshit. The real thing is nothing like that. A vampire doesn't talk with you. It doesn't lean in with a crooked smirk and ask if it can kiss your neck. It doesn't wear silk shirts or sip red wine in a candlelit room while reciting 19th century poetry. There's no grace, no class, just hunger. Ugly, raw, predatory hunger. You don't get time to beg. You don't even get time to process what's happening. One moment, you think you're alone. The next, you're not. And then, it's already too late. I survived by accident. And I'm not saying that to sound humble or to build suspense. I mean it literally. I should be dead. I should have died that night with my face down in a gutter and my blood soaking into cracked pavement. But here I am, and if you'll listen, I'll tell you what happened. My name's Evan. I'm 30. I live alone in a crumbling apartment in a city that never sleeps but also never cares. I don't own a car. I don't own much of anything, really. A mattress on the floor, a cracked TV that only gets 2 channels, a microwave that sounds like it's going to explode every time I use it. That's home. I don't have friends. I don't have a girlfriend. I never really learned how to talk to people without feeling like I was intruding. Growing up, I was always the quiet one, the awkward one, the invisible one. I used to think that was temporary, that once I hit adulthood, things would somehow fall into place, that I'd find my people. I'm 30 now, still looking. I work nights at a 24-hour supply warehouse. It's as mind-numbing as it sounds, loading and unloading boxes, scanning barcodes, sorting pallets. The only upside is that I don't have to deal with customers or coworkers much. Just clock in, move heavy things, clock out, go home, eat something cheap, sleep, rinse, repeat. Except tonight was supposed to be different. I actually tried. A few days ago, I stumbled across an ad online, single and ready to mingle, over 25 party night. It was hosted at some downtown lounge I'd never heard of. Casual dress code, drink specials, supposed to be a chill environment to meet people. I stared at the flyer for way too long, hovering my mouse over the RSVP button like it might bite me. Then I thought, why not? What the hell did I have to lose? So I shaved, put on the cleanest clothes I could find, took the subway across town and walked the last few blocks to the venue. It was one of those dim, trendy places that looks cooler than it is, the kind with a bouncer who doesn't look up when you walk past, and bathrooms lit like a horror movie. The inside smelled like citrus and gin. There were people already laughing at the bar, some mingling near high tables, others dancing half-heartedly to slow pop music. And I froze. I stood near the entrance, pretending to scroll my phone while my nerves twisted up like barbed wire. Everyone looked like they belonged. Everyone had someone to talk to. I told myself I'd wait a few minutes, scope things out, maybe grab a drink to loosen up. I never even made it to the bar. 30 minutes passed, then 40, then an hour. I kept thinking I'd find a good opening, that maybe I'd see someone else standing alone and strike up a conversation. But I didn't. I just stood there like an idiot, sweating through my shirt and praying no one was watching me. Eventually, I gave up. I didn't even say goodbye to anyone. I hadn't even said hello. I just slipped out the door, back into the city night. It was almost 2 a.m. I stood on the sidewalk outside the bar, pulling out my phone to call an Uber, but the app kept spinning. Searching for drivers, it said, again and again and again. Nothing. It was late, maybe too late. The surge pricing was insane anyway, and I didn't feel like paying triple for a 3-mile ride home. Screw it, I thought. I'd walk. I've done it before. It's not that far. Straight through downtown, past the old train depot, cut across the underpass, then up the hill toward my neighborhood. Shouldn't take more than 45 minutes. The city never feels quiet, even when it is. It breathes, a low hum in the concrete, a flicker of motion at the edge of vision. Rats slipping into storm drains, wind brushing over dumpsters, neon signs buzzing like hornets. But if you're used to it, it becomes background noise. At least, it usually does. That night, something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. The buildings looked the same. The streets were the same. Same cracked sidewalks, same yellow-orange haze from the streetlights. But there was something underneath it all, a pressure, like the air was too dense and empty, too empty. There were no cars, no people, no footsteps echoing from down the block. Just me and the quiet. I shoved my hands in my pockets and picked up the pace, trying to shake the feeling. I told myself it was all in my head, just nerves from the party. Embarrassment curdling into paranoia. The night always feels weirder when you leave a place feeling humiliated, like everyone's watching, even when no one is. But then I heard it. Not a voice, not a sound I could describe, just something behind me, a shift in the air, a feeling of presence. I turned, nothing, just the empty sidewalk stretching behind me. I kept walking. 2 blocks later, I heard it again. This time, I stopped completely, looked around, still nothing, but the feeling was stronger now, that uncanny prehistoric part of the brain, the lizard brain screaming you are not alone. I stepped off the sidewalk and ducked into the mouth of an alley. My breath hitched. I crouched low behind a trash bin and waited. 30 seconds, a minute, nothing. Then I saw it. Not a figure, not yet, just a silhouette at the end of the street. Human maybe, but too still, too focused, like it didn't need to move. Like it was waiting for me to keep going. I crouched lower, and that's when it moved. It didn't walk. It shifted. One moment it was there. The next it was 5 feet closer. No sound, no stumble, like watching a video with frames missing. I didn't wait for the next step. I bolted. My feet slammed against the pavement as I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could hear it. The slap of bare feet, fast, deliberate. Not pounding like a beast chasing prey, not careless, controlled, quiet, measured. Like someone saving energy for the last sprint. Like someone who knew I was already wearing myself out. I tore around a corner and bolted down an empty street, passing shuttered storefronts and dead neon signs. The sidewalks were deserted, and the air felt thick, like the whole block had been carved out of time, like no one would look out their window, like no one could. Every flickering streetlight felt like a lifeline. I ducked behind a recycling bin and crouched, chest heaving, struggling to breathe quietly. A few seconds passed. No sound. But that pressure was still there, not supernatural, just instinct. Pure, primal dread. I eased around the edge of the bin and peeked back the way I came. There he was, not smiling, not playing, just standing. His chest rose and fell like he'd been sprinting for miles. His clothes hung off him like he'd been wearing the same set for months. Hoodie half-zipped, jeans ripped at the cuffs, knees dirty. He wasn't dramatic, he wasn't theatrical. He looked tired, but wired. His limbs trembled with tension, his mouth twitched, his fingers curled and uncurled like he was trying to keep them from shaking. Not out of fear, out of hunger. His face was pale, not from death or myth, but from malnutrition. Starvation. Skin stretched a little too tightly over the cheekbones. Eyes sunk just a little too deep. His mouth hung partway open, not in some vampire grin, but in exhaustion. I saw the teeth. They were real, human-shaped but filed down, too flat to be natural, too sharp to be accidental. And his stare, it was locked on me. Like he knew I hadn't gone far. I didn't wait. I ran again. This time, I didn't zigzag. I beelined for something that felt real. A bus stop. 1 block ahead, I saw headlights, dim, sluggish, and the long, boxy frame of a city bus rolling up to a corner. The glowing route number above the windshield read N9 and Night Loop South. I waved frantically, stumbling into the street. "Hey, wait. The driver slowed as I reached the door, looked down at me from behind thick glasses. "You all right?" he asked as the door hissed open. Yeah, I lied, panting. "Just need a ride, anywhere, just out of here." He gave me a look, half annoyed, half curious, but didn't push it. "Get in. Next stop's 42nd and Eldridge." I collapsed into a plastic seat near the front and wiped the sweat off my face with the sleeve of my jacket. My legs were burning, my chest ached, but I was on a bus, moving, in public, around a normal person. That had to mean safety, right? Wrong. I didn't even notice at first. The bus had stopped for a red light. I was slouched in my seat, trying to slow my breathing, watching buildings drift past the window in blurs of graffiti and dim light. Then I noticed something in the side mirror. A figure, walking fast, really fast. Not jogging, not sprinting. Just that same deliberate pace, like his muscles didn't want to waste anything. He was a full block back, but gaining. My heart dropped. "Hey," I said, leaning forward toward the driver. Can you drive a little faster?" He glanced at me, half laughing. "What, you late for something? It's 2 in the damn morning." I didn't respond. I just kept watching the mirror. The figure was still there, closer now. His hoodie was soaked with sweat, clinging to his arms. His steps were off balance, like his body was half dead already, but moving anyway, driven by something other than strength. The bus rolled through the light, picked up speed. The figure fell out of view. I breathed again. The driver didn't notice anything. Why would he? Just a barefoot guy on the street. 100 of those in this city every night. But I knew better. I got off at the next stop. It was stupid, I know that. But every second on that bus was making me feel like a sitting duck, like if he did catch up, I'd be trapped. No windows to jump from, no doors to hide behind. Just 2 rows of empty plastic seats and one very confused bus driver who'd die trying to intervene. At least on foot I could run, again. So I nodded to the driver, mumbled a thanks, and stepped off into the chill. The bus pulled away. Its taillights blinked red, then faded into the night. And then, silence. I turned. There were 2 parallel rows of parked cars ahead. A laundromat, a check cashing place, a tiny late-night bodega with bars over the windows and fluorescent lights buzzing inside. I walked toward it, made it about halfway. Then I heard the footsteps again. No mistaking them now. Same pace, same slap of barefoot soles on the concrete. Steady, creeping, confident, like he wasn't chasing me, just closing the gap. I spun around. There he was, closer than ever. No more subtlety, no more distance. I saw his chest rising, his hands twitching at his sides. He didn't scream, didn't growl, didn't say a word. He just kept walking. And his eyes, they never left mine. Not for a second. He looked at me like I was food, like I was water, like I was the only thing between him and dying a slow, starved death. I ran again. I burst into the bodega and slammed the door behind me, nearly knocking over a rack of cheap sunglasses. The clerk, a kid barely old enough to drink, looked up from his phone. "You good?" "Someone's following me," I said, out of breath. The kid's face tensed. "Like, here?" I turned and pointed out the window. Nothing. The sidewalk was empty, no one there. The kid peeked, then gave me a look like "You're one of those," but didn't say anything. "I'm just gonna stay in here for a few," I muttered. "Buy something in a sec." I wandered toward the back aisle, heart still hammering, trying to act casual. There was a small fridge with energy drinks and bottled water. I cracked one open and sipped it, palms shaking. A few minutes passed. Then I heard the door. Just a soft ding as it opened. I peeked from behind a shelf. There he was. Same guy, only now he looked even worse. His legs buckled slightly as he stepped forward. His skin had a strange sheen to it, not sweat, not oil, something dry, like dust clinging to him. His hoodie was torn at the collar. His lips were parted just slightly, and he was staring directly at me. The clerk raised an eyebrow. "Yo, can I help you?" The man didn't answer. He took another step. "Sir?" Still nothing. The clerk looked nervous now. He stepped toward the counter and reached under it, probably for his phone. The man took a third step. That's when I bolted. Out the back, past a sign that read, "Employees Only," through a kitchen space and a back hallway to a rusted steel door. It wasn't locked. I shoved it open and burst into the alley. The door slammed behind me, and I ran. The alley was narrow and reeked of garbage juice and stale grease. My feet skidded across wet pavement as I turned sharply, then bolted toward the far end where a chain-link fence divided the alley from the next block. I didn't hesitate. I climbed. My hands burned against the cold steel. I scraped my knee on the top coil, snagged my pants, and tore the fabric as I flung myself over and hit the ground on the other side in a messy roll. Behind me, the door burst open. I didn't stop to look. I ran. I pushed through the narrow space between a warehouse and a shuttered Thai restaurant, knocking over crates and cutting my hand on something metal as I slipped through. My lungs screamed. My vision blurred at the edges. I turned a corner, and then I saw it, the security booth. Just past the warehouse parking lot, a little box with glass walls and a mounted floodlight. Maybe a guard, maybe a phone, maybe something. I sprinted for it like it was holy ground. There was no one inside, just a worn chair, a mini fridge, empty coffee cups. The kind of place someone was supposed to be, but hadn't been in hours. I slammed the door shut behind me and locked it. It wasn't much, a single bolt lock and thin plexiglass, but it felt like a miracle. I collapsed into the chair and tried to think. I needed a plan. I needed to call someone. There was no phone, not even a radio, just a clipboard with sign-in sheets from 3 days ago and a busted monitor hooked up to nothing. My hands shook as I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. 4% battery, no signal, of course. I turned off the screen and pressed my back against the wall. And I waited. He came into view maybe 2 minutes later, walking again, that same stride, no wasted energy. He looked like he was about to fall apart, legs buckling, shoulders drooping, arms trembling as they hung by his sides. But he wasn't slowing down. If anything, he looked more focused. I knew that look. It was the kind of look you saw on people at the end of a marathon, on starving dogs who smell food through a fence. He wasn't stalking me anymore. He wasn't pretending. There were no tricks left in him. He just needed to eat. He reached the booth, and he stopped. Our eyes met through the glass. His pupils were huge now, almost swallowing the whites. His chest rose and fell like a piston. He was covered in sweat and grime and whatever black smears stained the front of his hoodie. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead to the glass. His mouth twitched, no smile, just hunger, raw, mindless hunger. Then, he raised a hand and punched the glass. Hard, the whole pane shook. A crack formed. He didn't have super strength. He wasn't smashing through concrete, but he didn't need to. He only needed to hit it hard enough, long enough. I saw the tendons in his neck strain as he punched again and again. The crack widened, the lock rattled, my legs itched to move. I had to go. I had to get out of there before the plexi shattered and he got through. I looked around the booth. Nothing I could use as a weapon, just a rolled-up newspaper and a flashlight with dead batteries. I grabbed both anyway and checked the side door. It opened into a narrow stairwell that led to the roof of the warehouse. I ran. The metal stairs groaned under my weight as I took them 2 at a time. I reached the roof and ducked low, trying to stay out of sight. Below, I heard more pounding. One pane shattered. A few seconds later, the door below opened with a metallic bang. He was inside. I crawled across the rooftop until I reached the far edge. From here, I could drop down to a fire escape. It was steep, and I had no idea if it would hold my weight, but there weren't many options left. I climbed over the ledge and swung down onto the rattling platform. Something popped in my shoulder. I nearly screamed, but I held it in and climbed fast as I could, down one flight, then another. Halfway down, I looked up. He was on the roof now. He must have followed my footsteps or the noise. He didn't charge, he didn't shout. He just stared down at me, body swaying slightly, like he could barely stay upright, but he'd never stop trying. Not until I stopped moving. I hit the ground hard. Another alley, another row of dumpsters. This one fed into a cracked street lined with broken streetlights and skeletal trees. I limped forward, clutching my shoulder. The pain was blinding, but I moved anyway, because behind me I heard it again. Not fast, not powerful, but relentless. Those same footsteps, getting closer, always getting closer. I found a hole in a fence and squeezed through into what used to be a playground. Rusted swings creaked in the breeze. A seesaw sat tilted sideways on a bed of gravel, and beyond it, a storm drain. The metal grate had been pulled aside at some point, probably by teenagers. Or something worse. I didn't hesitate. I ducked into the tunnel. The concrete was slick. My shoes slipped as I climbed downward deeper into the dark. The world narrowed to the sound of my own breath and the soft, echoing slap of shoes on wet stone. Mine, and then his, coming from behind. I didn't scream, I didn't pray, I just ran. The air inside the tunnel was damp and close, thick with the sour tang of mildew and old runoff. I ducked as I ran, crouched low to avoid the rounded ceiling. Water pooled at my feet, soaking my shoes, making every step slick and risky. It smelled like rotting leaves and rat piss. I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. My phone, nearly dead, was tucked in my pocket to preserve what little battery it had left. I didn't dare use the flashlight yet, not unless I absolutely needed it. I moved by instinct, one hand on the rough concrete wall, the other gripping the useless flashlight like it might magically become a weapon. Behind me, I heard him enter. No screams, no snarls, just the soft splash of bare feet hitting shallow water. Same rhythm, same pace, a little closer now, a little louder. I tried to go faster. My shoulder throbbed from the fire escape drop. Every time I turned or braced against the wall, a jolt of pain ripped through my upper arm and down my ribs. I nearly slipped more than once, but I kept moving because I could feel him getting closer. The drain opened into a wider junction, a circular chamber with 3 branching tunnels leading out. A ladder led up to a rusted manhole cover, but it was jammed with debris and wouldn't budge no matter how hard I pushed. I picked a tunnel at random and slipped into it, breath ragged, shoes squelching with each step. This one was tighter, narrower, just wide enough for me to move with my arms slightly raised, like I was wading through a hallway meant for someone smaller than human. I pressed forward, then stopped. Up ahead a turn, sharp and sudden. The tunnel bent left around a blind corner. I didn't like it. I didn't want to go where I couldn't see. But I had no choice. I crept forward, turned the corner, and stopped cold. Dead end. Concrete and rust-stained water. Nothing else. I spun around. He was there. 10 feet away, bent low to avoid the ceiling. His hands gripped the sides of the tunnel. His head twitched slightly as if sniffing the air. When his eyes locked onto mine, there was no malice in them. No triumph, no sick joy, just desperation. Ravenous, burning desperation. His mouth opened slightly, tongue pressed against his teeth, as if he could already taste me. Then he lunged. I didn't have space to dodge. I didn't have time to think. He grabbed my jacket, fingers bony and stiff, nails jagged like they'd been chewed down with a knife, and yanked me into the wall. My shoulder exploded with pain. I screamed. He tried to pin me, pressing his forearm against my throat. But I was bigger, not stronger, but heavier, and he was starving. I kicked, drove my knee into his side, elbowed his face. His grip slipped. I shoved him back into the curved wall of the tunnel. His head cracked against the concrete. He stumbled just for a second. I took it. I lunged past him, shoulder first, slipping in the water as I pushed through. He reached for me again, missed by inches. I didn't stop running. I tore through the tunnel, gasping, stumbling, barely keeping upright. I rounded a corner, then another, until I found another chamber. This one had an iron grate on the ceiling, light filtering through from above, a ladder. I climbed. The rungs were wet and slippery, rust cutting into my palms. I reached the top and pushed. The manhole cover groaned, stuck. I braced my shoulder against it and shoved with everything I had. The pain was blinding, but it moved. An inch, then another. I slipped my fingers under the edge and heaved it aside, and I pulled myself up into the street. The world exploded in noise, distant traffic, air conditioners, a dog barking somewhere down the block. I was on a service road behind a row of storefronts, trash bins, a broken shopping cart, a car with a smashed windshield and 4 flat tires. No people, but no vampire either. Not yet. I shoved the manhole cover back into place and staggered into the shadows. A second later, I heard him slam into it from below. I didn't wait to see if he'd get through. I limped toward the closest building, a diner, closed, lights off, no sign of anyone inside. I tried the door anyway. Locked. I banged on it with my fist. No response. I backed off, turned toward the street, and kept going. My legs felt like rubber. My shoulder was on fire. My hand was bleeding from where it had scraped against the ladder. I'd been running, climbing, slipping, bleeding for hours, but I was still alive, and he was still behind me. A block later, I ducked into a used tire shop with its garage door half open. The inside was dark, cluttered with rubber and grease-smudged tools. I slid behind a stack of tires and dropped to the floor, trying to quiet my breathing. I waited, 1 minute, then 2. Then I heard footsteps outside, not sprinting, pacing, back and forth, like a shark circling a cage. Then, nothing. Silence. I stayed hidden for what felt like forever. My phone buzzed softly in my pocket. I pulled it out. 2% battery, 1 bar of service. I unlocked it. The signal dropped, came back, dropped again. But then, 1 bar. Stable. I opened my Maps app and searched my location. I was 9 blocks from home. 9 blocks, 9 blocks. I could make it, if I moved fast, if I stayed quiet. I took a breath, counted to 10, and I ran again. The streets felt endless. Every alley, every turn, every row of shuttered buildings looked the same in the orange haze of weak streetlights. My legs barely worked. My shoulder throbbed with every step. My socks squished inside soaked shoes, and still I ran. Not fast anymore, just steady. It was survival now. Not a race, just movement. Movement was life. The wind picked up, dragging old flyers and fast food wrappers across the pavement. A police siren wailed somewhere in the distance, far off, indifferent. I wanted to believe that meant civilization, safety, help, but deep down, I knew better. I was 9 blocks from home, and I could feel him behind me again. It started small, that sense, that pressure, like something old and hungry had locked onto me from just beyond the nearest building. I turned corners and caught nothing. But the air was different, thicker, like it carried breath that wasn't mine. Once, I looked into the glass of a shattered shop window and saw movement behind me. Just for a moment, just a flicker. He was catching up again. I made it 5 blocks before I had to stop. My lungs were shot, my knees buckled. I leaned against a graffiti-tagged phone booth and nearly threw up. My fingers shook, my throat burned. If I hadn't been so terrified, I might have collapsed and let it all end. But he was out there, still following, still moving. And I knew that even now, with a body that could barely keep upright, he'd keep going until something in him snapped, until his hunger outweighed pain, until all that was left was instinct. He wasn't smart, he wasn't clever. but he was starving, and he wasn't going to stop. I cut down into a shallow pedestrian underpass. Graffiti lined the walls, names, crude jokes, a child's drawing of a sun with a smiley face. The lights overhead flickered. The air was colder here. I walked fast as I could, limping. Halfway through I heard the footsteps again, soft, getting louder. I turned. He was at the other end, still walking, still locked in on me. But something had changed. His face, his eyes, the way his head tilted slightly forward, like he could barely keep it upright. His arms now hung limply, swinging awkwardly with each step. His gait had a lurch to it, unstable, not from injury, from starvation. His cheekbones were sharper, his lips had started to dry and split, his hands trembled with every step. Like his body was failing, but refusing to shut down. He wasn't even trying to hide it now. There was no chase, only pursuit, slow, inevitable. I turned and bolted again. 3 blocks left. I cut through the shell of an abandoned grocery store, shelves stripped bare, shopping carts overturned, pigeons nesting in the rafters. The whole place smelled like mold and dust. I stopped in the back near the old walk-in freezer and crouched low behind a pallet of broken-down boxes. Silence. Then, footsteps. Inside. I held my breath. I could hear him moving through the aisles, not running, not calling out, just searching, hoping I was weak enough to be caught now. I watched from a gap in the shelf as he passed. His hoodie was soaked through. Sweat? Blood? I didn't know. His ribs showed through the fabric. Every step looked like it could be his last, but he kept going. The hunger had become everything. He moved past me. I waited. Then I slipped out and ran again. 2 blocks left. I was on streets I recognized now. The Vietnamese bakery on the corner. The old flower shop with the hand-painted window. My building just 2 blocks down. I could see the top floor from here. I was close, but so was he. I saw him in the reflection of a car window across the street. He was running now, no longer pacing, no longer saving energy, sprinting. The moment had come, the tipping point. He had nothing left to lose. If he didn't catch me now, he never would. I tore down the street. My legs were jelly, my throat was raw, but I ran. I didn't look back. I heard his feet slapping the pavement behind me, irregular, staggering, but fast. Too fast for someone who should have collapsed by now. But he hadn't. He was still moving, still hungry. I reached my building and fumbled with the keys, hands shaking. The main door was just 10 feet away, the kind with the small square glass window and chipped white paint. My keyring slipped once, twice, footsteps louder now. He was close. I jammed the key into the slot and twisted. The door clicked open. I shoved it and tumbled inside, slammed it behind me. There was no lock on the inside, just a metal push bar. I braced myself against it, shoulders screaming, as I heard him collide with the other side. The glass cracked, the frame shook. He threw himself against the door again, harder this time. I screamed and shoved back. He hit it again. The glass fractured. Thin spiderwebs of cracks snaked across the pane. I screamed louder, pushed harder. One more slam and then... nothing. Silence. I waited for a minute, then 2, then 3. No more pounding, no more footsteps, just the sound of my own heart, ragged and wild. I dared to look through the broken glass. He was gone. I didn't move for a long time. My back against the inside of the building's front door, knees pulled to my chest, body trembling as the adrenaline began to wear off. The cracks in the glass above my head caught the hallway light like spider webs made of ice. My shoulder ached, my calves burned, my throat felt like it had been scoured with sandpaper. But I was inside. He hadn't gotten in, and for the first time in hours, I was surrounded by walls. Walls that didn't shift or echo or hold the weight of dripping, empty silence. Just the lobby. Old tile, mailboxes, stale fluorescent lights. I stood slowly. Every joint complained. Every movement felt like I was dragging a dying body behind my skin. I didn't even check the street again. I didn't care where he went. I was done. My apartment was on the 4th floor. There was no elevator. Normally, that would have pissed me off. Tonight, it felt like nothing. Just more pain, more motion, more of the same. Each step up the stairwell was another war with my body. My right arm hung limp. My lungs could barely keep up, but I climbed. 1 floor, then 2, 3. By the 4th, I was barely standing. I leaned against the railing outside my apartment door, heart thudding so hard I thought I might black out before I even got the key in the lock. I forced my hands to work, found the right key, slid it in, turned it, the door creaked open. I stepped into the one place that still felt like mine, a tiny studio apartment with yellowing wallpaper and the faint smell of mildew and floor cleaner. Microwave on a shelf, mattress on the floor, piles of worn clothes in the corner, ugly, pathetic, but safe. I locked the door behind me, deadbolt, chain, and a bar I kept for good measure. I shoved a dresser against it too, just in case. Then I collapsed onto the mattress, and I laughed, a raw, broken sound that came out of me like vomit. I couldn't stop. The kind of laugh that had no joy, no punchline, just relief, just madness. I had made it. I had lived. For 5 minutes I lay there in silence, trying to breathe, trying not to cry. Then I sat up and checked my phone. 1% battery, no signal. Didn't matter. I turned it off and tossed it onto the mattress, stood, walked toward the bathroom. I wanted to shower, to scrub the grime and fear off my skin, maybe drink something cold, sit in the tub with the lights off and let the water wash the last few hours away. I passed the apartment door on the way, paused, checked it, still locked, still barricaded, no noise outside. I reached the bathroom and turned on the faucet. The water sputtered, then poured out cold. I cupped my hands and splashed it on my face, let it run down my neck, into my shirt. It helped a little. I reached for the towel, dried my face, turned, and stopped. There was a sound, not from the hallway, not from above, from inside the apartment, from the kitchenette, a soft scrape, like something dragging across linoleum. I crept forward, heart hammering again, just when I thought it was done for the night. I passed the bathroom threshold, took one slow step toward the kitchenette, and then something moved behind the fridge, not fast, not loud, just a shift, a form rising into view. Him. He stood with one hand on the edge of the fridge, using it for balance. His legs shook, his hoodie was half torn off. His face looked worse now, cheeks sunken so far in he barely looked human, eyes wide, lips cracked, blood, mine, dried on his fingernails. He didn't snarl, he didn't lunge, he just stood there, barely able to keep upright, staring at me like a starving man staring at a plate. He had followed me inside. I didn't think. I ran for the closet, threw the door open, slid inside. There was no lock, but I held it shut, pressing my weight against it, back braced, knees up. I could hear him moving, shuffling, not quickly, just dragging himself forward. Then he coughed, a horrible, dry, wet sound, like something inside him was breaking down, like his body was rejecting itself. He staggered against the closet door. I felt the impact through the wood. Then, silence. I waited. 10 seconds, 20. Then, I opened the door a crack, just enough to peek out. He was lying on the floor, sprawled on his side, chest heaving, still breathing, but not moving, still alive. But something was gone. He looked hollow, not just in body, in focus, like whatever drive had kept him going, mile after mile, hour after hour, was spent, burned out. He hadn't gotten what he needed. He'd used up everything chasing it. Now he was just waiting to die. I didn't go near him. I didn't try to finish him off. I didn't call the cops. I didn't do anything. I just stared at him, And he didn't even look back, not once, just lay there, eyes open, but dead in every way that mattered. I sat on the floor with my back pressed against the closet, knees drawn up to my chest. The room was silent except for his breathing, and mine. No more footsteps, no more slamming doors. Just the sound of two people, one barely alive, the other barely human, sharing the same stale air. He hadn't moved, not a twitch. He was lying on his side, knees curled, one arm stretched awkwardly behind his back like it had stopped working halfway through a crawl. His hoodie was soaked through. His face, what was left of it, looked like something that had dried out in the sun. His mouth was slightly open. I couldn't see the teeth anymore. His lips were too cracked, too dry, but his chest was still rising, shallow, unsteady, still breathing. He was dying, starving, and I had made it home before he could finish the job. He had followed me across half the city, wearing a body that didn't want to carry him anymore. Something about that chilled me more than any supernatural monster ever could. Because there was no power here, no myth, no mind control or flying or regeneration, just desperation, just biology, just a predator so far gone it couldn't even lift its head anymore. I should have killed him. That thought kept circling in my head, over and over, like a drunk vulture. I should have found a knife, a hammer, something, anything. Finished it. He'd have done it to me, no hesitation. So why didn't I? Because I was scared. Not scared of him, not anymore. Scared of what that would make me. I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't brave. Hell, I wasn't even interesting. I was just some guy, a loser by most standards. A 30-year-old nobody with no friends, no family, no love life, no real future. A man who went to a party hoping to change his life and ended up running for it instead. If I killed him, what did that make me? What would I see every time I closed my eyes? I dragged myself to the far side of the room and sat with my back to the wall facing him, just watching and waiting. He twitched once, shifted. I flinched. But he didn't rise, didn't lunge. He just curled tighter, like a dog too cold to move. I checked my phone. Dead, didn't matter. It wasn't like anyone would believe me anyway. Who would I call? What would I say? Hi, there's a vampire in my apartment. No, not like the movies. No, he doesn't fly. No, he's not sexy. He just tried to eat me. Right. The hours passed. The room went dark, then pale with morning. Light seeped in through the dirty window. Not golden sunlight, not warm, just gray, washed-out morning light. The kind that makes the world look like it never really woke up. He was still there, still breathing, but slower now, quieter. I stood and limped to the kitchen, grabbed a plastic cup, filled it with tap water, and placed it near him, just out of reach. I don't know why. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was some twisted sense of mercy. He didn't move toward it, didn't even flinch. At 6:11 a.m. he died. No dramatic gasp, no final lunge, just a quiet breath. Then nothing. No more movement, no more pressure in the air, just a dead, broken thing lying on the floor. No one to cry for it, no one to bury it, just me. And the sun creeping through my blinds. I didn't tell anyone. I dragged the body into a garbage bag. He was light. Too light, like there was nothing left in him. I waited until the street was empty and dumped it in a construction site dumpster 3 blocks away. No one saw me. No one asked. This is a big city. People ignore what they're supposed to, especially when it looks like trash. I walked home in the full light of day, and I slept for 16 hours straight. I didn't dream, or maybe I did, but my brain refused to keep the memories. When I finally opened my eyes, the sun was already setting again. A sick yellow light bled through the blinds, throwing long shadows across the peeling floorboards. For a second, just a second, I didn't know where I was. Then my eyes landed on the spot where he died. The floor was clean now. I'd scrubbed it twice, poured bleach on the wood, opened the window even though I hate the cold. The smell lingered anyway, like mildew, like rot. like something that had soaked into the walls of this city long before I ever got here. I didn't go to work the next night, or the next, didn't call, didn't check email. I knew they'd fire me. I didn't care. What would I tell them? I was hunted through the city by a dying vampire. I watched it starve to death on my living room floor. Yeah, that'd go over real well. I sat in bed, slept too much, ate too little, kept the lights on at all times. I shoved towels under the front door, nailed the window shut, slept with a claw hammer under my pillow even though I knew it was probably too late to use one if it came to that again. I kept thinking he was going to get back up, that I'd open the fridge one day and see his face, that I'd hear the soft tap of bare feet on tile in the middle of the night, but he didn't come back. He was gone. For good. I did try to find out more, what he was, where he came from, whether anyone else knew. The word vampire felt stupid in my head, but I used it anyway. I spent hours online, forums, archived newspapers, deep Reddit threads full of broken grammar and empty usernames. And what I found scared me more than anything else that week. Not the stories, the silence. There were no real accounts, no public incidents, no leaked videos, no grainy photos, nothing credible. Nothing that said, "This is what you saw, Evan." Which meant one of two things. Either I was alone in this, or I wasn't, and the rest just didn't survive. One night, a week after it happened, I sat in the same place on the floor, staring at the water stain in the corner. And I thought, maybe it would have been easier if I hadn't made it, not because I wanted to die, but because now, I knew they were real, knew they weren't monsters from fairy tales or ancient lords with velvet cloaks and tragic pasts. They were animals, hungry, dirty, real, and they could blend in, live among us, until one night they couldn't anymore, until one night they got too hungry. And someone like me, someone invisible, forgettable, walking home alone at 2 a.m., became their last shot at survival. That's the part that sticks with me. He didn't hunt me because I was special. He hunted me because no one would miss me. I leave the city now at night sometimes, walk different routes, keep my head down. Earbuds in, but not playing anything. Just enough to make people think I'm not listening, but I am. I'm always listening now. For that sound, those soft, wet, deliberate footsteps, that scraping breath, that animal hunger. Because I'm not the only one who survives something like this. I know that now. There are others out there, like him. Others who haven't gotten desperate enough yet, but they will. And if you're like me, if you're alone, forgotten, always walking home just a little too late, one night you'll hear footsteps behind you, and they'll match yours perfectly.